In this video, we're going to take a look at scan policy management in the StackHawk platform. When running scans against an application with HawkScan, a scan policy determines which vulnerability tests run during the scan. Scan policies are determined at runtime depending on the settings in the StackHawk YAML configuration file. For example, configuring an OpenAPI spec or a GraphQL schema will result in the scan running policies specific for those configurations. In addition to automatically selected scan policies, StackHawk has added functionality that will allow users to both select and customize scan policies in the StackHawk platform. Here, we see a list of our applications. If I click on an arrow next to one of my applications, it will open the application settings. I'm going to go ahead and click into the application settings of my app called Vulny Django. On this page, I can select the scan policy for this application. By default, the HawkScan default policy is selected. If I click the Applied Policy dropdown, it will reveal several scan policies that can be configured for this application. This includes scan policies for GraphQL APIs, REST APIs, SOAP APIs, as well as other policies. Let's assume that my application is a REST API. In this case, I will select the OpenAPI REST API scan policy. Now, scans that run against this application will use this scan policy. Now let's say I want to build a custom policy to scan my Django application. I will switch my applied policy back to the HawkScan default policy and use that policy as a template to build my custom policy. Then I will click the Customize button. This brings us to the Scan Policy Management page. Here we see a list of all of the available vulnerability test plugins that we can enable or disable in our scan policy. These are separated into lists of active scan plugins and passive scan plugins. There are already some plugins selected as part of the default policy. I will go ahead and disable a plugin that I don't want to run during my scan. Next, I will enable a plugin that I do want to run during my scan. This plugin, Source Code Disclosure File Inclusion, detects vulnerability to directory traversal attacks and is not included in the HawkScan default policy. If I go back to the application settings page, I will see that the applied policy now shows a customized label, meaning that my scan policy is a customized version of the HawkScan default policy. Now I'm ready to run a scan using this custom scan policy. I will jump over to scan results from a scan that used the same custom scan policy. Here we can see the source code disclosure file inclusion vulnerability test was run during the scan and found the vulnerability in the scanned application. Thanks for watching this overview of the scan policy management feature in the StackHawk platform.